This is an introduction to our daily closeout program. We use this as a central gathering place for all of today's financial information and also management data that we end up tracking. We save each one of these every day, and this directly imports into QuickBooks, which is our accounting software program that we use at the home office. Uh, each day's entry in QuickBooks actually looks like this. Not that this matters to you. You guys don't see QuickBooks here in the restaurant, but instead of being able to or having to enter all this for every single day for each restaurant, we have a program that will take that daily closeout information, all of this financial information, and automatically import it into QuickBooks. It is called Transaction Pro Importer. This is what it looks like. Again, you never have to mess with this, but just know that we have software that allows us to easily transfer each of the day's financial information into our official accounting software. So that's what that looks like. This is a daily closeout program that has been filled out for the day. It has several sheets on the bottom. This one is called the day total. Most of this financial information will be filled out from you typing in the data from the point of sale flash report. So at the end of the night, when you close out the POS system, it'll spit out a long report that is called a flash report, and all you have to do is type in the numbers from that flash report into here. And generally, they're even in the order that it is on that flash report, so it really doesn't take very long. And we also have a cashier screen. This will allow us to do 2 or 3 things at once. We can balance the cash drawer at any time during the day as often as we want, and then record that. Notice here that it was counted 5 times and how over short it was each time. It allows us to track how many tips were paid or what tips were paid out to what server and what tip share that they paid in. And it also allows us to track the comps that were made during the day. It also has a page called Bills, where we track all of the bills and checks and paid outs that were made during the day. And it also has a lists page, which we're going to talk about in a second. First, in your Dropbox, Tampa, you're going to see a folder called Closeouts. And in that Closeouts is one program called Daily Closeout. And that is the one that we work on every day during the day. It has to remain named exactly Daily Closeout, which I'll get to in a minute as to why that is. So please do not change the name of that program. Once that program is finished for the day, we're going to rename it something else based on obviously the day that it was. And we keep all of these. We have a closeout program for every single day that we've ever been open. And you can go back a few months. You can go back and look at September 10th's closeout if you want, if you ever need to. But every day we're working on the daily closeout. Then at the end of the day, we rename it and it gets saved forever. One of the things that is important about the QuickBooks and that importing program is that everything that goes into it, whether it's an accounting category or a vendor or an employee name, has to remain consistent. Otherwise, when you try to import it into QuickBooks, if it's not exactly the same, then it kicks it out as an error. So notice here, and I'll get to more of these in a minute, that this vendor is called Publix. If for some reason, and it's been used before, so in QuickBooks we have Publix already as a vendor, but if we tried to send in a bill on today's closeout that said Publix I don't know, CKS, then it's going to kick it out as an error and it's not going to recognize it, and it's going to mess up our importing in the back office. So we use these lists to copy and paste the same thing every time so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time, and that we get it always exactly the same every time. You don't have to manage much on this, and you don't have to manage it very often. So this is the page on the daily closeout that you're actually going to use the least, and you don't have to go to very often. Every employee, current employee, is listed right here in alphabetical order. Every employee that we hire, we have to enter into here, and we have a consistent method of how we treat employees in a lot of different ways that they go in our systems, and that is last name, comma, space, first name, and their first name has to be their correct legal first name. In Donnie Crumb's name, you might think that that's actually not his legal name, but it is. And the same with Eddie. It's not Edward. His legal name is Eddie. However, notice that every employee is written that way: last name, comma, space, first name. So please sort of put that everywhere, and you're going to find lots of other places that you would put a new employee in. So when we enter a new employee, notice here a new name. So we're going to hire somebody, and we're going to, let's say their name is Baker, comma, space, John. You do have to hit the enter button to get out of that. And it will automatically go in this list, and it will automatically alphabetize it when I hit this add button. Watch this. Oh, there's John Baker. When John Baker is terminated for whatever reason and we don't need him on this list, all we have to do is highlight him and delete the name, and it re-alphabetizes. Somebody here has made a mistake. We're going to get rid of this, and it re-alphabetizes. The reason we want to get rid of people once they've left us is so that when we are picking from this list of names, which we'll get to later, it's just a shorter list to deal with. So we don't want 150 names on there. This is the Tampa restaurant, and the Tampa restaurant has a consistent problem with managing employee parking. So we've added this column just to show us who drives what. So when we see a car parked where it's not supposed to be, we can tell whose car it is. This column does not exist in the other two restaurants, and hopefully it won't have to, but that's not something that you would see in the other two restaurants. When we are assigning a bill to a vendor, we have a list here of all vendors. Notice that this is a much longer list, and this is the list of vendors that we have pretty much ever used in this restaurant. Now this is a longer list, so when you're picking from this list, it's annoying to have to scroll all the way down to all the way bottom here just to find a vendor. So we have a second list called a common vendor list, which are people that we use all the time, and it makes the list much shorter. You as a manager can decide to add or take out vendors from your common list. You can make the list even shorter if you decided that for some reason Thomas Couto isn't used very often and it's not worth having him on a common vendor list. You could take him out, and you can put him in the all vendor because you might use him occasionally. And the same thing else, you could take any one of these vendors that you use all the time now and put them in this list. So common vendor, we could come up with a new vendor that we're going to make common all the time and add him in here, and there he is. Well, actually we're not going to use him very often, so we're going to highlight him and we're going to get rid of him. Maybe Amazon here that we used to use occasionally, but now we want to put them over here. You could simply copy, put them here, add them, and now there's your Amazon. Now you have them in both. There's really no point in having them in both, so let's get rid of them out of the all vendor list, because now you'll be able to pick Amazon from here. There's no point in having them in there. Well, now I've changed my mind. We don't use them that often. There they are again. Let's get them off of here. There's no point in having them duplicated. And that's how that works. But keep in mind, as I said, Acme Electric, because it's in here once, means we've already used them at least once, and in our QuickBooks and in our accounting software, they are written exactly as Acme Electric, one space in between, capitalized ACME, everything else. So if we ever use Acme Electric again, the principle that we're going to show you in the bills page is that it's going to be typed exactly that way. That's why we have it in here like that. Notice here also, it reminds you staff names, last name, comma, space, first name. And that concludes the list page. Okay. Let's go back to, so this is the daily closeout. When you start, it'll all be blank. When you are finished at the end of the day, it will be all filled out here. Assume you have at least some bills. That's pretty much every day you have at least something. Cashier's screen has been kind of filled out. And then once it is, notice here it says daily closeout. And once it is renamed at the end of the day, it'll be exactly the same, and it'll have a number in front of it and a date with it as well. That number just keeps things organized. It's the next day. So the next day would be number 825, 826, and so forth. It doesn't really have any significance other than that. And that is the introduction to the daily closeout.